First thing, let me say, I am so sorry that you have to be here today. But if you're like 99% of people out there, you probably hate filing your taxes. Now, lucky for you, I happen to be a 1%er. No, not that kind of 1%er, not even close. I'm the kind of 1%er who actually sort of gets some enjoyment out of doing taxes. I know, I already have an appointment set up with my doctor to figure it out. But lucky for you, I have just written a new book, my first published book called Tax Secrets by me. And you can find it, link in the description. Actually, this is the only copy, so if you'd like it, bidding starts in the comments. But I'm gonna walk you through 6 things that you really need to know before you file your taxes. Otherwise, you could end up in a lot of trouble, or you're gonna end up losing a lot of money. And those are 2 things that we want to help you avoid. Number 1, I am not a professional. That's probably clear. This is my office. This is my wife's desk. I am literally not a tax professional. I only know what I know because I've been doing taxes for years and years. And like I said, I like it. So rule number 1, do not take advice from someone who's not a professional. That's a little counterintuitive. You can listen to me, but nobody else. Number 2 thing you need to think about before you file your taxes is your documents. The US tax system is probably like the most messed up system, like one of them in the entire world. Like the government knows how much you're supposed to pay, but they make you file the paperwork to tell them how much you're supposed to pay, but they already know and they could just tell you.
It's a mess.
But at the end of the day, you need your documents. Now, if you are just like a regular W-2 employee, this is actually gonna be really easy. All you have to do is sit back, relax, let your employer send you your form. Maybe you have an online portal, you can go check that out. But make sure you have all of your tax forms. It's really important that you have all of them together before you file. Otherwise, you're gonna have to do what's called a tax return amendment. And that really sucks because that's just a whole hassle and you may be inclined to not want to do that, and that's gonna land you in jail. So we don't want you to be in jail. So that's number 2. Documents. Make sure you have all your documents. And a couple of those documents might be, like I said, W-2, maybe 1099 if you do sort of gig work, like a 1098 if you do have like a mortgage, like mortgage interest or anything else like that. If you're going to school and you're getting like FAFSA, like Pell Grants, that sort of thing. There's a lot of different forms that you could potentially need to file. Even if you like open a bank account and got like a bonus for opening that bank account, your bank account's gonna send you forms. So there's the potential for there to be a lot of forms that you need to file. Make sure you have them all. Next up, you need to be taking a look at credits and deductions. Now, these are 2 very different things. First of all, credit is something that you are just given. The government is essentially giving you this money. A deduction is something that you're gonna take a deduction for a certain thing or another. Let me explain. So a tax credit is something like an earned income tax credit, a child tax credit, education credit. So like a child tax credit, for example. I have a child, let's say. That child is going to give me, I think as of now, like a $2,000 tax credit. So basically that's just like the government says, here you go, $2,000 for having a kid. That's just like kind of free money, not really free, but free kind of for the sake of this example. And then a deduction is basically something that you can make it look like you made less money than you actually did. So if I made $50,000 this year and I had a specific deduction for something, like let's say my mortgage interest, and I paid $20,000 in mortgage interest, that's a lot, but it's possible. Then I could basically say, you know, I can deduct a certain amount of this from the earnings that I had. So I could basically say I can deduct this much from the earnings that I made to make it look like instead of earning 50,000, it'll look like I earned like 40 or whatever, 35. That's just a very, very rough example, but that's what it looks like. So if you can take advantage of all these deductions and credits, you can end up making it look like you made less money than you actually did, which is completely legal. Like it's very, very important that you do that. But you can also get extra tax credits that is just like $2,000 here, $1,000 here. I remember when I was in school, there was some sort of education credit that I could take advantage of. It's like, oh, you are a full-time student. Here's a little bit of extra for you. It's not a lot, but it's better than nothing, especially in the system like it is today. Now, tied to that is the standard deduction versus itemized deduction. Understanding the difference between these 2 is pretty important, but it's also really simple. So the standard deduction is really just a simple, like solid one amount that the government says, listen, if you don't have specific deductions that you want to take that equals more than this amount, then you can just take this amount. I think right now the standard deduction for a married filed jointly is almost $30,000. Now, for most people, like average people like us, we are most likely not going to take any more deductions than $30,000. Unless you're out there doing some crazy stuff, most average people would just benefit from taking the standard deduction and then looking for credits that they can like apply for or that they could qualify for. Because like me in my case where I'm married, like if I could take a $30,000 deduction, unless you have like mortgage interest, maybe like medical, maybe you did tons of charitable donations, you're really not going to hit that $30,000 threshold or more, which is what you'd want to do with a deduction that was like itemized. You'd want to itemize over $30,000 worth of things in order for the standard deduction to not make sense. I hope that all maths in your head the way that it maths in my head. So standard deduction, most of the time is gonna be perfect for you. Itemized deduction, probably not, but it is always worth looking and seeing if it is. I always do every year, just in case. Sometimes I come close, sometimes I don't, but it's generally speaking, for most of us out there, standard deduction is going to be the way. You could accidentally potentially take the itemized deduction, but most softwares out there for DIY tax prep won't let you do that. Number 4 is personal information and timing. For making sure your personal information is right when you're going to file your taxes is like a small thing, but also very important. If you get your name wrong, if you get your social security number wrong, you get your address wrong, like it can just complicate things a little bit. You want to make sure that everything is like how it is on your forms, that it matches when you're inputting it. It's going to save you a huge headache. So make sure you get your personal information and timing correct. The timing element to that is, again, making sure you wait for your forms, making sure you have everything ready before you go to submit so you don't have to go do some sort of like revision on your tax return, because that is just a pain. Number 5, DIY versus professional. The really easy answer to this is, do you want someone to help you or do you want to do it by yourself? Most people could probably do it by themselves really easily and for a significantly lower cost. Sometimes you don't get a tax return, sometimes you have to pay extra taxes, a lot of times, but then you also have to pay someone to file your taxes for you, whether it's a professional or one of these DIY services. So it's really messed up, but you have to do it. So make sure that you either go with one of these options. Like I would probably say go with the DIY option, and here's why. When you go and look for DIY places to file your taxes, there's a lot out there that are sort of scams, to be honest. Like they're gonna charge you way more than they need to charge you in order to get your taxes filed. There's this little secret website called like irs.gov. You've probably never heard of it, but at that website, you can go and find a list of places where you can basically file your taxes for free. You don't need to go to the TurboTax. You don't need to go to H&R Block where they're going to charge you, potentially hundreds of dollars to file. You can go to the IRS website. I'll link the link in the description below so you guys can find it. But you go there and they'll tell you where you can file for free. A lot of the times those places do make you pay a little bit to file your state taxes, but it's like maybe 15 or 20 bucks. It's pretty insignificant. If you do feel like your taxes are a little bit more complicated and you just want to make sure you're getting all of your deductions, all of your tax credits, you can go pay a professional. Remember, like I said in number 1, I am not an expert, and you should not work with anyone who's not an expert. So make sure you're finding a professional who can help you. It is going to cost a little more, probably at least a couple $100. But if you feel like you can get the benefit out of that by getting a better tax return or paying less taxes, then that $300 or $400 or whatever dollars may be worth it. Next up, we have scams and payment. There's a lot of scams out there when it comes to like getting your tax return early, getting people to put in their card information in random places. And honestly, right now, if you wouldn't mind, I'd really appreciate it if you put your credit card information right in the comments below. It would really help support the channel.
Just kidding. Remember, I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy here on YouTube.
Don't fall for scams. Like if it's not directly on a filing service, do not fall for it. Like I get it. It's tempting to want to get your tax return a little bit early, but a lot of times those services open you up to types of scams and that sort of thing. Payment. Make sure that you have like direct deposit set up if you don't want to wait forever to get a physical check in the mail. That one's really simple, but having a place for your money to go if you are going to get a tax return is going to make all the difference. The last thing that I'd say is do it as early as possible. You do need to balance out making sure you have all your forms, making sure you're ready, making sure your info's correct, finding the right person to help you, but really like the sooner you can file, the better before things get really crazy. If you push it all the way up to the deadline, you're more likely to miss things, make mistakes, potentially have like fines, maybe you're gonna have to file for an extension. It just makes things all the more complicated. So taxes don't have to be that hard. Honestly, if you just walk through a really easy tax service, they're really gonna help you along the way. And if you have questions, just Google them. Ask the questions. There's so many great resources out there to help you make sure you can take advantage of everything possible. You can basically like put some of your your family info, just like basic stuff, nothing really personal, personal, but put basic stuff in there and say, hey, someone in my situation, you know, what kind of tax credits could I get? Are there any deductions I should be looking for? And even if you don't give any information, you could just, you know, ask ChatGPT or whatever, just so you can get a little bit more information on those types of things. It can make all the difference. Anyway, like I said, I'm one of those 1%ers. I enjoy doing taxes. It's actually kind of fun for me. It is getting a little bit harder as the years go by. You know, things like investments, like 1099 work, that type of stuff does complicate your taxes to some extent. But at the end of the day, better to get them paid than to not pay them at all, because I don't want to only eat 3 meals a day behind bars. So if you are like me, don't want to do that, feel free to drop a comment below. Thanks for being here. If this has been helpful for you, if you have any other questions, please, again, leave them in the comments. Like I said, love doing this kind of stuff. It's fun to chat with you guys about doing your taxes and other really fun things. I think I'm gonna have another video coming out here pretty soon talking about some of the scams in the tax industry, aside from just taxes themselves. But yeah, keep your eye out for that, and subscribe. If you like this video, subscribe. It'd be great to support the channel. I really appreciate it. I'm Nathan with Money Bros, signing out.